Hey everybody, it's Christopher, and welcome to Karen Isn't Always Right. Today's episode, we've got Bree and Rick, and we all worked together for about 3 years. They're good friends of mine, and they've since moved away, but I think they bring an interesting perspective, both from the aspect of being managers, who've dealt with a lot of pretty intense situations, but now they have new roles, and so they bring some perspectives from that as well. So you guys, you're welcome. I still have 0 sponsors, so you don't have to listen to me talk about advertising and shit like that either. So, hallelujah. Anyway, I had a lot of fun doing this, and so I hope you enjoy this episode.
Both of those were very, very eye-opening experiences.
Okay. And how do we all know each other? Do you guys want to talk about that?
Well, we met at the theater.
Okay.
Yep. And now we are dating.
Right on. And I hired you off the streets.
Off the streets,
Off
yes.
the streets is how I put it. Yeah. So Bree came to me, like I said, off the streets with a lot of retail experience, and she was hired straight on as a manager. And Rick, you were hired as an employee for me, right?
Yeah, I started out in the concession stand.
Yeah. And then moved up very, very quickly, right? So straight from concession into management, and then ultimately a kitchen manager, and did a very good job.
Yeah,
so,
really quick.
So we've all known each other for what, about 4.5 years or so, almost 5 years now. Yeah, so something like that. I think you weren't from the very beginning, right?
No, I started about, was it a year after you guys opened? Something like that.
It's like that following summer that we opened.
Yeah,
I think so.
Okay. So just to preface the rest of the podcast real quick, just a quick disclaimer is these are our opinions and viewpoints in this podcast and are not reflective of the opinions and viewpoints of our employer. So just want to get that out there real quick. So. Okay, great. So we've Bree and Rick are here from out of town. They're here on vacation back in good old Colorado, and they've graced me with their presence at my house, and I've sucked them into doing this podcast. But we've already been drinking and talking for the last 2 hours or so, something like that. So our jaws are nice and greased up. So. But we've been talking about a fair amount of stuff about the industry already, and so I figured if we're going to keep talking about it, we should get on the podcast and talk about this stuff. So one of the things I told you guys to give some thought to was just some of the crazy guest experiences that you guys have had over the past few years. And I think, Rick, when you first came into the house, you were talking about something you dealt with recently. What was that?
Yeah, very recently. It was like a week, maybe 2 ago. We had a customer came in and they just dined at a restaurant at the theater, and then they went and saw a movie after, and they realized they're getting all these notifications from their bank that they're spending all this money on their card and all this stuff. And so their immediate response was come back to the restaurant, guns blazing, because that's supposedly was the last time they remember using their card.
Guns blazing, is that what you said? Yes. Coming in hot.
Very, very upset. And immediately started accusing us of stealing their wallet.
Because that's natural.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Point the finger anywhere else besides himself.
That's right.
But the mirror, yeah. And she started going at my staff members immediately and accusing them and like, well, where's the server that was taking care of us? And unfortunately, they had left for the day. But they were certain that they went ahead and they took their wallet and were out spending money and stuff like that. And so then they asked, I need to speak to a manager, and we're very insistent about that and getting our information and all that stuff. And I chimed in. I was like, well, I am the manager here. What can I help you with? Yeah. And, obviously she was very, flustered, and I tried to, stay as calm as I could, but obviously I was still a person in the line of fire. So she was laying into me a bit and laying into my staff members who were trying to figure out what was going on.
So when she's laying into you, what is she? Is she really going off? Is she yelling?
Yeah, I mean, she was cursing at us and I know he fucking took it, and he's out spending money on my card and this, that, and whatever, and it's gonna reflect back on me, and just outright blaming everybody else that was in the room. And again, like laying into us, like it's always our fault and stuff like that. So she had said that she was there seeing a movie with her friends and whatever, and so my immediate response to her was like, okay, well, you said we're seeing a movie, right? Did you buy concessions? Did you go anywhere else in the theater? And light bulb went off, and she was like, oh, you're right. I went to buy concessions. That was the last time I had it or whatever. And I was like, okay, well, there's a concession manager right over there. Go ahead and go talk to them, and they can pull up the feed from the video cameras, kind of figure all this out. And it turned out, later on she had come back, but it turned out that she had it when she checked out of the stand, went into her movie, and it turned out that another guest sitting next to her had pocketed it out of her purse and left during the movie and went and spent all her money.
Was there anybody around like that could have potentially seen her do this?
I mean, she saw the lady come and sit down next to her because she set her purse and stuff in the empty chair next to her, and then someone sat on the next chair over, and she didn't think anything of it. She was by herself, which to me that would have been a bit of a, you know, I need to move my stuff out of the way sort of thing, but not to everybody, so that's fine. But anyway, she went and spent this money and all that, and you know, obviously she came back and was like tearing into us, and then she ended up filing a police report, the whole, you know, 9 with all that, and she came back, and you know, we saw her walking over, and we're all like, oh, she figured out like what's going on, and we were like, okay, she's coming back to like apologize. Or whatever it was. And she told us what was going on and everything. She was like, yeah, someone else stole it. That was the gist of it. That was it.
And no apology.
No apology, no nothing.
How gracious of her.
Yeah, it was great. It was just a nice way to wrap that whole situation up.
People, man, I don't get it. So when you guys are at your particular location, like, I mean, you've worked with me, and so I know how I train you. But like at your location, how are you guys trained to deal with, you know, where do you draw the line when someone's cussing at you and screaming at you and yelling at you, as far as like when you say, look, you know, you can either calm down or GTFO?
I mean, for me, I'm more prone to get to that point fairly quick compared to some other people who might be new or they're not used to dealing with that.
Sure.
But the same thing I used to deal with the location we all worked at was you deal with these unruly guests that come up, and I would just go through stuff in my head where I was like, okay, I'm trying to understand where you're coming from here. And then it gets to a certain point where I've done everything I can, and I can't do anything else. Mm-hmm. And if they're still attacking me as if it's my fault, then I'm going to tell them, like, look, I can't do anything for you.
Yeah.
So you have two options. You can leave, essentially, or you can take care of it another way with, you know, the police or whatever you need to do.
Yeah.
But I can't do anything for you.
Is there a thing that's going through your mind where you're trying to sort of differentiate the difference between someone cussing at you and someone just being frustrated and swearing? And does it make a difference to you?
It makes a huge difference. Okay. I mean, if I'm feeling attacked, like I did something that wronged them to their bare bones sort of situation, or, you know, whatever it is, my immediate response to something like that is, okay, who the fuck are you? To come meet me that way. I'm a very kind of straightforward kind of person where if you're upsetting me, I'm gonna let you know, or you know, that sort of thing. So I will tell them, like, immediately, if that's how I feel, I will respond accordingly. But
how does that usually go over?
Sometimes it's quick, and they're immediately they're like, oh, crap. Or like a lot of times we have people come in and they'll try to take advantage of whatever we're doing there. And I'm not the kind of person you come up and try to do that with, because I know how it runs and like how it should be and whatever. So I am up front. I'll be like, no, I'm sorry. And a lot of times that negates everything that's going on. They're just like, well, I can't get away with it with this guy. So
do you ever worry though about if you take that stance, you know, if there's going to be fallout and then the people above you, you know, like obviously if they decide, okay, I'm going to go to your boss and I'm going to complain about you, do you ever worry about that fallout?
I mean, I do, and the way I typically go off, I would say, best way to phrase it, on some people that do this sort of thing is I do it in a manner that's calm. I'm not very like, I don't yell at them necessarily or anything like that. But I mean, I have faith that the people that are above me in that position or whatever, they have faith that whatever I did was for the right reason. So, I mean, the general aspect is I wouldn't do anything that would jeopardize my position,
Right.
in a sense, but I will let somebody know, like, hey, back off.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
know?
Okay.
And I worked for you for a while,
Yeah.
and you know how I worked there, and that sort of thing. And I
it
didn't
sucked,
have any.
man. No.
Yeah. Didn't have any major things come back.
I used to get
Yes,
complaints
issues.
about this guy all the time.
Oh.
No, I'm kidding.
But
All right.
Yeah.
all right, Cool. Bree, what about you?
Ugh.
So many stories.
So many.
Bree, to give a little background on her, when these guys were working for me, Rick primarily worked in the kitchen, so he didn't have to interact with guests directly quite as much as maybe Bree did. I mean, he still did, so I don't want to take that away from you. But
yeah.
and you were an employee, and you definitely had to interact with guests one-on-one more frequently then. But Bree was my concession department head, and so she was in the trenches, so to speak.
Yeah, basically.
But more frequently. So talk to us about some of the bullshit you had to deal with.
A lot of it had to deal with alcohol.
Good times.
And yes.
And that's not what you primarily deal with in your new job, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. You just don't have to deal with the customer aspect.
No customers.
Good for
which
you.
is- it's
Good
so
for
much
you.
nicer.
Who's jealous? Raise your hand. I'm raising my hand.
No, I'm genuinely a lot happier because I don't have to deal with all of the customers that.
This is a great job
are
if it wasn't for the
unruly.
people, right?
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of good customers out there that engage with you and
Or appreciative.
they
Kind.
thank you for working long hours if it's like Christmas Day.
Because your boss sure as hell didn't.
No,
A kid.
But yeah, it was a lot of cutting people off because they didn't have the right ID or didn't even have an ID or they were already too drunk or they're just all of the different things. But being called racist before was really interesting, especially with the employees that were standing next to me.
It's rich also coming from a woman who is Hispanic. You know.
Filipino, half
Filipino, sorry.
Yes, close.
Well, Ramirez, I think.
I know everybody does. It's fine.
How did I not know this?
You should have.
I don't know. Sorry.
That's what happens when you assume.
I guess. Make an ass out of you and Umption.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times, like whenever you do have to cut someone off, it's embarrassing for that party that you are cutting off. So
Why do you think it's embarrassing for them?
just a little over intoxication. Some people not realizing that they're at their limit.
They feel stupid.
They feel stupid. They're with their friends, their family. They're trying to have a good time, and then they realize, oh, well, I spent too much money and had a few too many drinks. So it's time that we let's go back and get another drink. But as in our position, we have to make sure our customers are safe, our staff is safe, and everything. Protect the license, protect the employees, but really, at the end of the day, we're trying to protect the guest.
By license, you mean liquor license? Right?
Liquor license, yes. But
So what's one of the worst experiences you've had that kind of comes to mind?
I have several,
Well,
unfortunately.
Well, we can listen to them all. But come up with
I've
a...
definitely got one. It sticks out.
Yeah, I know yours was in the theater, but mine was.
I'll tell one about
in the
Gabe
store.
in a little bit.
Oh, poor
Yeah.
Gabe. But there was one who they came up with husband, wife. Husband ordered his drink, and then wife ordered hers, and they both presented IDs. The husband presented his driver's license, and the wife presented a piece of paper. And
Is this a note from mom or?
basically, though, it was a note from the state basically saying that, oh, this person renewed their license online, and they're okay to drive the vehicle until they receive their new ID in the mail.
So it's a temporary license?
It was a temporary license, but it was like an email format. It was like a letter.
Gotcha. Hey, real quick, have you seen, not to get too far off track, have you seen these? Oop, hold on. So this is the new digital Colorado license.
Oh, yeah, no, I haven't seen those yet.
So in Colorado, we can now have our license on our phone. And so if you look, the flower moves. That's one of the security things. And it's scannable, too. And
That's
so in
good.
talking with the police officers, these are valid.
That's good.
You still have to carry your license on you, but anyway, it's a new thing.
So that just makes it so you don't have to pull your ID out of
Correct.
your wallet?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And eventually, I think the governor's idea is that we'll move away from physical licenses and we could just have them on our phone all the time.
Is Colorado the only one doing that right now?
As far as I'm aware, there might be others, but
That's
this is
interesting.
fairly new. So I did it. I actually put it on my phone so that I could educate myself in case people present them at the theater. But they are scannable. Like Officer Linder at the theater that does security, he tested it out and
That's
stuff,
good.
and it's working.
Cool.
So yeah.
Good.
So anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No worries. But yeah, unfortunately, we only accept a valid ID card for alcohol purchases, and that piece of paper basically saying that they're okay to drive a vehicle was not acceptable at the theater level.
So she probably told you to go fuck yourself, right?
That and then some. It got into a very, very extremely heated argument. Unfortunately, it was actually with an employee at first, and I was standing off to the side, assisting another employee, like running for them and grabbing their popcorn and whatnot. When I started overhearing this couple get really, really loud, and
So you're like watching this escalate.
yes,
Okay.
yeah, because at the time I was very focused on the customer in front of me. And I was seeing if the employee was going to be able to handle themselves by saying no. And obviously, they were not going to back down. So I stepped in at that time. I looked at the piece of paper, and I agreed with the employee that this wife was not able to be served any alcohol because she didn't have an ID.
Walk through the policy real quick, just so everybody understands
Yes.
like how that's supposed to work.
So you have to be ID'd. You have to have a valid ID, whether it be a state ID, a driver's license, a passport, passport card, active military ID card. One of those items. A temporary license is accepted, but it has to be in addition to the actual voided license as well, which this lady did not present. It was just that silly piece of paper. But the employee did the right thing. They said no, and then this lady just kept going off on the employee and myself at the time because I looked at the paper and I'm like, no, this isn't a valid ID. I'm sorry. Do you have any other form of ID? Which after this all escalated, she actually had another form of valid ID, but she was so into just yelling at us.
And trying to be right.
And trying to get us to say, okay, fine, you can have your drink.
Why can't just that temporary ID work? Doesn't it have a picture on it?
Not that one.
Okay.
It's literally, it was like an email that was printed off.
Okay.
Yeah, because I guess if you renew at the DMV, they give you a physical temporary ID, which we do accept.
Right.
But this was, she did it online, so it wasn't really a temporary ID. It was just.
It just showed that she applied for her ID.
Yeah, it was more like a permission slip. Like, you can drive your car.
It's like a note from mom.
Yeah, yeah. You can drive your car. If you get pulled over for speeding, the cop will be like, okay, this is your ID. But we haven't really seen anything like this before, but we were erring on the side of caution, and this is how we were all trained. So
and this is because we'd rather err on the side of caution than making a mistake. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you never know nowadays.
And mistakes have been made.
Yes.
Yeah.
It has been. That was not fun, but this, as soon as she started laying into us, and
so walk us through, what is laying into us? How did that go down?
A lot of this stuff,
Speak on it.
I end up blocking out because it's a lot of really hurtful verbs and sayings and just a lot of negativity that I don't like to have.
And how do you, like, in your brain, how do you process that? Like, how do you feel when someone's really, like, going off on you about that? Like,
I have learned to not take it personally.
It's easier said than done sometimes.
It is. It really, really is. But at the time, like I wanted to make sure that the employees felt safe and they didn't get in that line of fire. So I would take all of the heat and let that employee step out so that they don't feel what is coming from the.
How do you keep yourself from getting amped up?
It's difficult. I mean, whenever this was happening, I was really shaking, and I didn't know if I would actually make it through this one.
Yeah, it's like hard not to freak out, right?
Because as soon as she started getting into it and everything, getting really heated, the husband started to as well, because
of course
he was just trying to back up his wife and whatever. But I mean, they both were being dicks about it.
Hey, let's not talk together. No, I'm just
But if they just would have calmed down and really let me explain why we didn't accept it, then we could have figured out a different solution. But I mean, they didn't really give me a chance to breathe. They're just like, well, your guys' rules are stupid and blah blah blah.
Convoluted too much, yeah.
Yeah, like this is ridiculous. Why do I have to wear a stupid wristband?
Because that's like one of the most common like complaints we get. I think there is like how convoluted our policy. Because like at this location, so when someone orders a drink, before you can even give them the drink, you have to explain the policy. You need to wristband them. You need to stamp the wristband, and then you go down and get the drink and bring it down. And then before you even set it in front of them, you need to find the ring in the sale and take their money and things like that. And so, from a guest point of view, it's extremely convoluted and
it used
excessive.
To be where you have to have a ticket as well.
Correct. Yeah,
that was even worse.
Yeah. So it's a lot of stuff that already aggravates them at the beginning, and then they're already aggravated. Now you've said, "Hey, your ID isn't working."
Yeah,
so what else you got? And it's even worse too if this person's clearly of age, probably. And sometimes employees will err too far on the side of caution. Well, now we ID everybody, but before we didn't. We would just ID anybody over the age of 40. Yeah, and so. But now that we ID everybody, kind of helps with that. But before, if they clearly looked of age, but the employee decided to err on the side of caution, they would ID somebody that's like 60 years old or looks 60. Then they would be even more aggravated. Now we still get that aggravation because they're like, why the hell are you IDing me? Because I'm like 95 years old and I'm with a walker.
And I'm about to die, but you're still. I just want a glass of wine.
This is ridiculous. Just use common sense, goddammit. And it's like, well, I'd love to, but bring your ID. I don't know what to tell you.
Just be a responsible adult and have your ID on you, please.
Okay, so these people are going apeshit, right?
Yeah, they are, and they wouldn't stop, and I am standing my ground. At this point, I believe the employee had actually gone into the Scullard area because they were very upset.
So they could cry.
Yes.
Yeah. We have cry rooms at our theater that are labeled cry room, and you have 15 minutes to cry.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. We don't really. Dustin does, though.
He did. But... yeah, I mean, this went on for probably 10 minutes or so, and there's just a line forming behind, this couple.
And so everybody sees this.
Yeah, everybody's seeing it. I mean, they're not being quiet about it at all. Their voices are raised, everyone's staring. Thank God no one was, recording at the time, because everybody does that nowadays.
Do you think the customers were on our side or their side?
Oh, they were definitely on our side, because after they had finally just dropped it, they decided to leave, not even watch a movie at that point, which is good because we probably didn't want them in the theater after that because they would be belligerent or whatever inside the theater, disrupting everybody else just because they were upset. But after they had left, I think they went outside to kind of talk about it. Everybody else standing behind them in the line, they were actually like, you did a great job. Yeah, they're like, you did a great job.
Don't you love when that happens? Yeah.
And I'm just still shaking, and I'm like, what size popcorn do you want? It was awful. Help. Yeah.
It's the best though when a guest after the one that's yelling at you is like, those people were assholes, because then you get that validation, right? Yes. Of like, okay, I did the right thing. Yes. They're the asshole. Everything is good.
Yeah.
So when you're dealing with that, so I know when I'm dealing with customers like that, I mean, you guys have known me for a while. I have a temper. I can get amped up pretty easily. I get anxious pretty easily. Like, when I'm getting yelled at like that, I can feel myself, like, shaking. And it's honestly, it's everything that I can do to not, like, snap on somebody. Like, how do you guys, like, hold it together and not... Is it because you want to keep your job? Is it because you don't want to kill somebody and go to prison? Like, what is it?
All of the above.
All of the above,
All of the above, yeah. I know, too, that a lot of it in my head, I have to think, there's some other reason why they're yelling at me. They maybe they do mean it, but most of the times they don't really mean it. They're just angry at the situation or themselves.
Embarrassed,
whatever it is. Yeah, they're embarrassed. Stuff like that. So I try to justify their reaction as best I can in that time, just to calm myself down.
Isn't that sad, though, that you have to justify someone else's behavior to yourself to not wring their neck? It's crazy.
Yeah.
What kind of world are we living in?
It's terrible. It's awful.
So it segues into, so I told you I was going to tell you a story about Gabe, which you guys are probably familiar with, but for the people listening. So Gabe is one of my managers, and he's
awesome.
He is. He's the greatest. He may be coming on here, so you guys might get to look forward to him soon. But Gabe had an incident recently. Well, it was really Gabe and a few others, but Gabe took the brunt of this. I don't remember. I may not have been at work that night or something. But anyway, so there was a situation where couple comes in. They're an older couple. They come in and go to the concession stand and buy. So the woman asks for wine, and then she's ID'd. She presents her ID. Everything is good. While she's doing that, though, so this really sets the bar for where we're going with this. But while she's being served, she decides to spend that time basically complaining about the size of the pour. Okay, and she even talked about how she took a cup home with her one time and measured it out, and we're not really giving her the amount of wine that she should be getting in her pour or whatever. So we're already off to a lovely start.
A lot of time wasted.
Yeah, like, seriously. And then we move on to the husband, and he asks for a beer. He's carded, as we should do.
Yep.
And he presents his ID, scans his ID, but it turns out the ID is expired. And so the employee does exactly what they're supposed to do, and they don't serve him. Okay, and so he's told, sorry, sir, but your ID is expired. I can't serve you. Now, once our employees make that decision that they're not going to serve someone, which is the right thing to do, then we absolutely cannot serve them. And even managers are not allowed to overturn that decision or anything like that. And actually, as the general manager, I made a mistake one time where an employee of mine denied service to somebody, and then I overturned it because I'm an idiot, and it caused some problems. That employee's now a manager, actually, but it actually caused a lot of frustration, and I learned from that mistake. But we really need to, as managers, we try to back up our employees, and so that's why that policy exists. But anyway, so the gentleman was, I say gentleman very loosely and using that in air quotes, but he was denied service, and they were clearly upset by this, and they had a few words, but ultimately they went into their auditorium. Now, this was made worse by the fact that they also had outside food. And so we don't allow outside food in movie theaters. For those of you who don't know, movie theaters are in the business of making their money on, we're in the food and beverage business. We're not in the movie business, really. So we make our money off of our concession sales. And so we don't allow outside food and drink. So they went up to the podium where we checked their tickets. They were told that they need to finish their food, blah, blah, blah. So that furthered to aggravate them. And so now they go into their auditorium. Well, apparently there was somebody else with them. Okay, so they go into their auditorium, and so a few minutes pass or whatever, and the same register, someone else comes out, and this younger man comes out, tries to buy a beer. The concessionist didn't really think a whole lot about it, and so they ID him, presents his ID, everything's fine, selling the same beer. But it's the same exact beer that the older gentleman had just tried to buy. And so the employee mentioned it to the manager. They didn't really think a lot about it during the transaction, but then after the guy left, they were like, this guy was trying to buy the exact same beer, not a common beer, I remember what it was, not super common, and it was a slow day. I think that's why I wasn't there. I think it was like a Wednesday or something. In fact, it was
It always happens on Wednesday.
because that was the day
Always.
that I was going up there to try on my tux because I was getting married shortly thereafter. And we'll get to that because I got a phone call on my day off, which is not unusual. So anyway, so yeah, it was a slower day. So I think that's kind of why it stuck out. So the employee tells the manager, and so then my managers are like attack dogs sometimes when it comes to things, because when they become aware of a situation, they really like they hone in on it very quickly. And so a manager goes into the auditorium and sees that the beer that they sold this young man, the younger man, was on the table of the older man. So our theaters, the auditoriums have little tables in front of the chairs. So this beer was sitting in front of the older man. He was drinking that beer. So manager goes in and says, hey, you didn't buy that beer. I'm going to have to take that. Now, instead of just taking it and then saying, hey, we're taking this, which is what you were really good about, if I recall, you would just do it. You would give them the opportunity. This manager was like, hey, I'm going to take this. And this manager, she's a great manager, but she's a little more on the timid side. And so she did that. But then these customers, both customers, the woman and the man, basically like sort of mockingly held out their drink and was like, oh, you want it? And then like pulled it back. Oh, you want it? Oh, and then pulled it back, like taunting the manager. And then the guy slammed the beer, like I'm doing right now. Mm-hmm. And so, so then obviously that was irritating, and highly against our policy. So at this point, now they've chosen to escalate the situation, and so then the manager is like, "You're gonna have to go, okay? Because you're violating our policy, which in turn is also violating the law. Like we have to ask you to leave." And they're not cooperating at all. So now it gets to the point where they've asked for reinforcements. So now like at least 2 other, if not 3 other managers have come down to this auditorium. This is a slow Wednesday. There should not be this much activity, but there is. So they come down to the auditorium, and it takes a hot minute to get these people to finally get up and get out of their seats. Now, as they get up and get out of their seats, they're coming out of the auditorium. They're in the corridor that leads out of the auditorium. And Gabe, God bless him, he's like trying to talk to this guy, and this guy is like, this is some bullshit, like just going off on Gabe. And at one point, he like takes the like a napkin and crumples it up and shoves it into Gabe's hand for some reason. But then he tells him, he's like, I ought to punch you in the throat, right? Now, Gabe is not a big man, okay? So Gabe's a little Filipino dude. See, here's the thing. I thought you were Hispanic. He's Filipino. I didn't put it together.
Yes.
But Gabe's a little dude. And for whatever reason, like there was, not to get too far off track, but there was another situation like a year ago where there was a fight in an auditorium, and I went in to deal with this situation, and Gabe was in there as well. It's because some affliction T-shirt wearing stupid motherfucker got beer spilled on his head, like a couple of droplets. Gabe's comes in, but he's like 3 rows down while I'm dealing with this guy. It looks like he's gonna turn me into pink mist, and Gabe's like 20 feet away. So he's not a confrontation guy.
No.
So anyway, so they're in the corridor of this auditorium. Guy says he's going to punch him in the throat. Gabe's like, I'm triggered. And so they're trying to get him out. Another manager comes. Gordon comes. He's trying to get these people out. And then at this point, the guy takes Gabe by the shoulders and like shoves him into the wall and was like, this is bullshit or whatever. Now Gabe has been assaulted, okay? And this is all over a fucking beer. All over a beer. And so then they now shit's getting real. And so, they call another manager to call the cops and security and things like that. But then the woman is like, you snowflake millennial, we didn't really do anything and stuff like that. Gabe's like, bro, you just laid hands on me, man. And it's all because, like, look, here's my thing. If you can't sit through a 2-hour movie without a beer, I think you might have a problem. Like, you need to talk to somebody. Much less assault somebody over it, And so then they're being escorted out. As they're being escorted out, so this guy is in probably like around his 60s or something like that. He's walking backwards from the managers down the hallway, double middle fingering the managers, going "fuck you, fuck you, fuck you" as he walks backwards out of the the theater. So then, the younger guy apparently is their, I don't know if he's their son, godson. It's like their godson or something like that. This is what came to light. So we thought he was fine. We thought he was sort of embarrassed because whenever you have one of these Karen, quote Karen type moments, a lot of times there's always somebody with that person who's losing their mind that's like, I'm really sorry, I'm
God,
so embarrassed, like I'm not really with them,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And so we thought he was cool. Like we thought we had a connection, so to speak. Not really what happened. No. This guy went on, I think it was Yelp or something like that, and left a scathing review of us, going on about how we mistreated them and how it was all bullshit and stuff like that. So, and then they decide to, they're in the middle of trying to sue us for this. So, which I don't want to get into the details about that. But like all over, holy crap, that was loud. All over a beer. Yeah. And so we're going to assault a 24-year-old dude who's 5'6" and 100, maybe $115, over a beer. Like, it's just ridiculous. So, I don't know, man.
That's why I like Dave so much. That's why I like Dave so much. He reminds me of me.
Yeah. That's Riley weighing in.
Too.
Riley's here.
Yeah.
Everybody say hi to Riley. And Ashley's sitting over there quietly, but you'll hear from her later. She's shaking her head vehemently now. So, but yeah, so crazy as shit. So alcohol issues galore, typically.
Oh, yeah.
What are some other issues you've dealt with?
I mean, similar situation to that, kicking somebody out of an auditorium or, out of the theater altogether just because they're being belligerent, or, maybe they don't realize that somebody else in the party is being belligerent and kick them all out.
And
Specifically,
that one was the girlfriend was drunk, right?
Yeah, so
Oh, tell me about this.
it was opening weekend for Guardians of the Galaxy 2. And we had multiple complaints already, that somebody was intoxicated or they're being really loud in a movie theater and stuff like that. So after about the third complaint, we had to go in and ask them to quiet down.
And you were just a fresh manager at the time, too.
Yeah.
This is at my theater.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this turned into a thing for me that I ended up being the one that kicked people out and stuff. But it's the whole thing. But
Wait, say that again. What happened?
Which part?
What did you just say?
I said it became a bit of a thing that people would come to me to
Why is that? Are you the tough one?
It was, I don't know.
Because nobody else has the sack to do it, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just
Back in my day when I was young, people chomped at the bit to go kick people out. I remember ushers that I would work with. Oh, I'm gonna fucking kick them out. Shit's getting real now. Like I'm doing this.
Nowadays,
Yeah, now everybody says
confrontation, whatever. And
That's the scary thing, though, right? Like, how are you? Well, you don't work in a theater anymore, but have you guys ever been faced with that fear of I'm about to get recorded and I need to be very careful about what I'm gonna say?
I think I was recorded at one point.
Was that the Christmas Day one?
I think so.
I was just talking about that the other day.
Yep.
We'll tell that story later, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, I think, I don't know why, but ever since I worked in the stand, apparently, other employees and whatever, they didn't even want to come to my register because for some reason I was intimidating.
You look mean.
I guess.
It's
I don't
weird.
know. Which it is what it is.
Rick's an asshole. I was just getting it out
A
there.
little bit,
Kidding.
But
I
anyway,
didn't. I'll be honest, man. I was your boss, and even I was like, I don't know about that guy. I feel a little. I don't know if I want to approach him.
I don't know what it is.
Yeah, you've got to look.
You've
You've got to look. No, it works well in the auditorium, though. So tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, another manager had approached me because he was uncomfortable with confronting somebody in an auditorium at the time, and
so they were bitching out.
Yeah, and I was just like, well, I guess whatever, I'll freaking do it. And I went in there and I was just like, hey, we really need you guys to quiet down. We've had multiple complaints about your guys' interrupting their film.
And they were just being too loud, right?
Yeah, they were just being too loud. They weren't throwing things or anything outlandish at the time. And so when we approached them, I could already tell that they had been drinking and they were intoxicated at that point. And so we asked them to quiet down. We're like, okay, we did our duty to tell them to quiet down for all the other guests.
Yeah.
And so we did, and I didn't.
Do you give them a warning? Do you say like, look, if you don't quiet down?
Yeah. We basically told them like, look, we've had multiple complaints about the the noise you guys are creating and stuff like that. So we need you guys to quiet down, or we're gonna have to ask you to leave.
Right.
And that sort of thing. So at that time, given their intoxication level and stuff like that, I didn't feel really comfortable leaving the auditorium yet.
Okay.
And so I stood down by the end of the stairs and went like kind of out of sight for the next like 5-10 minutes, just kind of waiting to see if they did what we asked or not.
Do you kind of hide out like where they can't see you a little
Yeah,
bit?
yeah, exactly. So that I
Out
could
of sight,
hear
out of mind.
what was going on, but I couldn't really be visible. And within that period of time, they were loud again. And it wasn't like they were just kind of like, oh, hey, yeah, you see this part, blah, blah, blah.
Like
it
obnoxious.
was like, oh my God. Like as loud as you can be in
Wait,
the
how did that go again?
It
Oh
was
my
your-
God.
It was your typical kind of intoxicated Becky
Right,
moment
okay.
there. But anyway, so I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm gonna have to go back up there, and I walk up there, and the funny thing was, everybody else in the entire auditorium, or whatever, was on our side, and they actually, as soon as I approached them, they started clapping.
Oh, nice.
So I had that reinforcement, but as soon as I approached them and started talking to them,
Probably embarrassing for them though, which escalated the
Yeah.
situation.
well, see, the thing was, they were so intoxicated, they did not give a shit about how they appeared to anybody. And so they were super confrontational. The guy who was doing most of the speaking at the time, his girlfriend, or whoever it was that was there, was so belligerently intoxicated she could barely make words.
Sloppy.
So we were like, okay, we really need to get you out of here. And so it got to the point where I was telling these guys, like, I need you to leave. And they're like, cursing at us, like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, we're here seeing a movie and we paid for this and blah, 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 and buy drinks and all this crap. And I was just like, yes, but we asked you to quiet down and you guys are not. And everybody else is trying to enjoy the movie. So I need you to leave now at this point. And of course, they don't want to leave. So they get confrontational more with me, to the point where this guy like shifts in the seat and gets all like squared up to me.
Oh,
To the point where I was expecting that I was about to get in a fight.
about to
You
go
were
down.
Yeah, and so I mean, I specifically remember at one point I was like trying to calm myself down, so I just kind of like I looked over at the screen for a minute and took like a breath, and then I turned back and I was like, I get your frustration, but I need you to leave the auditorium at this point. Period. And of course, they were trying to get whatever they could out of the deal, and
I
whatever.
think
and
you bribed them with
I
passes.
bribed them with guest passes,
to get them
which
out.
How dare you, sir?
yeah, well,
Dare you,
I
bro.
remember because I was in the office, like, because we were like closed, so I was doing stuff in the office. And I remember like you called to have passes come down there.
yeah.
I remember like going in there and seeing this happen. Like they were coming out of the auditorium. I literally thought that you were going to lose your job because of how worked up you were over these people.
I mean, I was pissed. I don't deal very well with.
Did I
people
know
talking
about this? Folks, I have a
remember.
terrible memory, just for the record.
I mean, I was a manager.
I am
for
involved in
maybe-
my operation. I just forget things.
And there's so many things like this that happens that you
Yeah.
kind of forget all of them.
Yeah.
Well, I was a
So
manager
many.
for maybe
This was a
like
couple
week
months.
or a month, maybe, or something like that.
Yeah.
But that was the first like severe altercation that I had to deal with, and I remember leaving the auditorium to get their guest passes as they were trying to exit, and I came back with them and everything, and they gave me guest passes, and I think the guy realized what situation he was in because it took him 15 minutes just to get out of the auditorium.
What?
Because his girlfriend was so drunk.
She was that hammered.
She
She
couldn't walk down
walk.
the stairs.
She couldn't walk.
Yeah.
Oh.
I was on the phone with security at this time. Like,
Yeah.
you guys need to make sure that they get home okay. Like,
Yeah, and I remember giving him to him. He's like, "Hey, man, I'm really sorry," and whatnot, because I think he realized once he got her out of the seat and she stumbled, I think he was like, "Oh, okay."
So
This is
yeah,
the-
now I get it.
So that part of
I'm
it,
in trouble now.
all of that part of it, and getting him out of the building went fairly smoothly after that. But it's that initial altercation and everything that was going on that just kind of like it hits you, and like you're getting attacked for doing your job essentially.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to deal with.
Ain't that some shit though? Like all you're doing, you're just trying to do your job.
Mhm.
Like so many guests that I've dealt with that are getting super amped up, and it's like bitch, I just work here, man. Like,
You
I'm
don't
just
make
trying
the
to do.
rules.
No.
Yeah, like especially like alcohol
Yeah.
policies and stuff like that.
Those
It's
are
like,
laws.
or the bag policy or whatever. It's like, man, I'm
Yeah.
just trying to do what I'm supposed to do. I don't want to get fired,
Yeah.
you know. But yet you're here making my life hell.
Yeah. I mean, the big thing that I've learned from like that experience and whatever is just kind of take small little things or like small victories in the situation.
Yeah.
I mean, when he got all in my face and everything, he actually had a customer cup or like for water, but he was
courtesy
using
cup?
for a spit cup
Mm.
for chew. And when he got up to get all of my face, he ended up knocking it into his lap. And so he was wearing it, so he was already uncomfortable because of that.
Some
and everything.
karma.
So it's just like,
Guess
that's what you kind of get.
that's some shit, bitch.
Yeah. But it worked out all right.
It's seriously tough, though. I find it like really difficult for me to. I mean, over the years, I've learned how to restrain myself and calm myself and things like that. But I remember early on in my career when I was really young, literally having a difficult time restraining myself from. Like, I don't know that I would necessarily ever hit somebody, like hit a guest, but I've certainly come very close to popping off on a guest, like verbally, you know, and telling them where to, you know, put it. But, you know, nowadays I think my issue is just letting it get to me internally, you know, and letting it work me up. Like, I'll literally, for particularly difficult ones, I'll have to like literally walk around the building.
Yeah, you have a walk.
Yeah,
You
you
have
all
a
know my
route,
walk.
yeah.
Like, it's funny because in our office, it's near some exit doors, and you can, from inside the office, you can hear the exit door open and shut because it's loud. And so if people know I was upset and then they hear that door open and shut, they know I'm like doing my walk.
Yeah,
I
you
like
have
have
a
a
route.
path that I'll walk. But I'll like go out to the compactor. I might kick the compactor wall or something like that, and then come back and vent to you guys or something. I mean, look, I was always for. You know, anytime a manager has a particularly difficult customer situation, if you guys need to come back in the office and vent about it or whatever, it's like, because we've all been there, like we've all had to deal with that shit, and the only way to really sometimes get over it is just to be like, oh my god, like you got to listen to this shit, you know.
And then we end up like laughing about it, like.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, if we
Yeah.
can laugh about it, I don't know that I've ever had any situations I can't look back on and laugh at. I did get. So there was one time a customer swung at me. I used to work at a theater in Baton Rouge a long time ago, and I had my own office as an assistant manager down on the first floor where the rest of the offices were upstairs. And somehow this customer knew that my office was there, and so they're like banging on the door, and so that immediately startled me and immediately like
You're
made me
triggered,
like
yeah.
get amped, and I was like, what the fuck, you know. And I thought it was an employee at first, so then I was going to be mad at an employee, and I opened up the door and this customer just starts screaming at me, and I was like, what the fuck is your problem? This is a long time ago, but I'm like, what the fuck's your problem? So then he took a swing at me, like literally in my doorway. So then I slammed the door. Thankfully we had security on duty, we had cops on duty or whatever, and I was able to like radio to the cop, and I'm like, dude, there's a guy outside my office door, just took a swing at me.
Yeah.
That's a little harder to laugh at, you know, when someone like decides to like
Friends.
physically,
Friends,
you know, do something like kind of, you know, Gabe's got a really good sense of humor, and he's really taken that whole thing in stride. Because honestly, the guy he could file charges against that person, and he's chosen not to, which is ironic considering that customer is trying to sue us or whatever. But yeah, I think it's just tough to. I just struggle with it as an individual of like not getting myself, you know, worked up, and
You have to like build a wall almost, like to.
Yeah,
you just have to block out any of your emotions or feelings or whatever, and
you gotta get thick skin for sure. Yeah.
just,
I mean, for me,
it's tough.
that part of it was fairly easy, and I think that's why I was so able to take care of some of the situations. Because I had, right before I started with the company and stuff like that, I was working for out in the oil fields.
Yeah.
So out there, it's a whole. That's what you deal with all day, every day. Just getting, you know, talked down to, cursed at, sometimes swung at, you know, this, that, or whatever. And so I already had fairly thick skin.
But then you have to find that balance between, okay, having a thick skin and being able to absorb that abuse from a customer, but then also not retaliating and being a dick back
Yeah,
to
yeah.
because we're in customer service. We have to be able to handle those concerns, and you have to be able to identify, okay, this person's frustrated. Let me empathize with why they might be frustrated. Because look, we can sit here and say all day long, we can make excuses for, this customer's full of shit or whatever, they're lying or whatever it is. But a lot of times, look, it's not about, is the customer right or wrong? Like, the name of this podcast is Karen Isn't Always Right, which is a play on the customer is always right, but the Karens aren't, right? So we can all sit here and say the customer's always right, but we know the customer is not always right. But it doesn't matter, right? And when you're in the customer service industry, it doesn't matter if the customer really is always right. It matters, do they think that they're right? And a lot of times, as long as they're being, that's why I asked earlier, like, how do you determine, are they cussing at you, or are they just cussing? Are they just are they laying into you, or are they just venting their frustration? You have to be able to differentiate between those things, and that helps you sort of, I guess, determine what direction you're going to go with that situation. Because again, we know they're just not right. Sometimes they're just not. Customer bought tickets for the wrong theater. Well, you're the one that fucked up, but even though they made the mistake, they're frustrated. It's an inconvenience. So as a manager, even though they're flipping out because it's
Still try to help them.
Christmas Day, they brought their entire family, their whole day was planned around this. They made the mistake. Now, we could, because they're sitting there venting in the middle of the lobby and screaming at you, you could easily just shut down and be like, well, I guess you're out of luck, and if you're going to keep talking to me about this, then you can kick rocks. Or you can be like, man, I totally get why you're so frustrated. I understand why you're yelling at me. Let's just calm down. We'll get this figured out. We'll find a solution to it. But fuck, it's hard, right? Like, when you're getting there, when people are screaming at you in the middle of the lobby, and there's 50 other people watching this go down. It's hard not to take it personally.
It's really nice though when you do offer that seed or that pass or whatever, or some sort of solution, or just show that you care, how they immediately turn. How they're like, oh, well, thank you.
Right.
Like,
Right.
just
Well,
all that anger goes away. I've seen it a few times, but
sometimes it'd be nice if they would just realize that you get more bees with honey.
yeah.
So, but yeah.
It's the world.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, we're coming up on an hour. I think this is went fast, right?
Yeah.
Did you guys have fun?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right, good. I had a good time
The good old
too.
days.
So
Oh,
hopefully we can.
Can I carry us out with something?
What's up, Riley?
So my hat.
What about
it
your?
says,
Let that
let
shit.
that shit
Yeah,
go.
Riley's wearing a beanie
Oh
that
my
has
gosh,
a Buddha on it saying "Let that
Sometimes
shit
you just gotta
go."
let that shit
You
go.
do.
Yeah. That used to be the background on my Facebook, so I think that's wise words to end on, and I think that's where we're at now. So hopefully, you guys may want to come back again, and we'll do this all over again.
Yeah.
So for that, we are out. That's the podcast, folks. Please visit KIARpodcast.com. That's KIAR podcast.com. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. New episodes are going to be posted weekly on KIARpodcast.com, Spotify, Apple, SoundCloud, and Stitcher. The views and opinions on this podcast are solely that of the guests and hosts and are not representative of any other organizations or individuals. If you or someone you know are interested in being a guest on Karen Isn't Always Right, please give us a visit at KIARpodcast.com and submit your interest on the Contact Us page, as we'd love to have you. Thanks for joining us on Karen Isn't Always Right, and we'll see you next time.
Ba